We all know a toxic colleague, the one who manipulates relentlessly to climb the corporate ladder. But when you're navigating the calculated dishonesty of the professional world, understanding the motive behind the manipulation is your most powerful defense. Not all toxicity stems from the same core pathology. Sometimes, the threat isn't a volatile psychopath seeking chaos, but a coldly rational strategist seeking instrumental gain. The consequences for your career and your sanity depend entirely on knowing the difference. Stay with us, because today we are decoding strategic toxicity and providing the clinical protocols you need to secure your professional boundaries. Welcome to the Resilience Protocol. Today we focus on Machiavellianism, a personality construct defined by strategic cunning, cynicism, and the pursuit of self-interest, often at the expense of others. We are differentiating the calculating strategist, or the high mock, from the impulsive cruelty of the psychopath. This distinction is critical because they require completely different counter-strategies. A Machiavellian is often functional, even successful, in organizational hierarchies because their manipulation is highly controlled and goal-oriented. They are seeking power, money, and status, not necessarily the pleasure of your suffering. We promise to provide licensed clinical insights and specific actionable protocols designed to protect your career from purely calculated exploitation. First, let's establish a clinical baseline. Machiavellianism is not typically classified as a disorder in the DSM, but rather a robust personality trait. A high mock individual possesses three primary characteristics. First, emotional detachment, which allows them to make ruthless decisions without remorse. Second, a profound cynicism regarding human nature, believing that everyone is ultimately selfish. And third, an overriding focus on instrumental goals, meaning they view every interaction as a means to an end. This is not about drama or emotional outbursts. It is about efficiency. Think of the high Machiavellian as a masterful chess player. They are not playing for the visceral thrill of the move. They are playing to win the game. They see relationships, colleagues, and organizations as systems to be gamed. If they are charming you, it's not because they like you, it's because your cooperation is statistically useful. If they decide to harm your reputation, it's not for the enjoyment of your pain, but because you represent an obstacle to their advancement. Cruelty to the Machiavellian is secondary. Utility is primary. If manipulation is too costly or inefficient, they will simply choose another strategy. This cold calculation is crucial to recognize. How does the Machiavellian operate within organizational hierarchies? They excel by mastering strategic selective charm. They identify power players, the decision makers, the budget holders, and cultivate powerful, often fragile, alliances. They are masters of delayed gratification. They will invest time, praise, and loyalty into a superior for months or even years, waiting for the precise moment when that investment pays off in a promotion or a key opportunity. Their social efforts are never wasted. They are meticulously recorded in their internal ledger of professional utility. When the high Machiavellian betrays, it is not impulsive, it is calculated. They betray when the utility of the new arrangement, the new promotion, the new alliance, significantly outweighs the cost of severing the old one. This focus on maximizing returns means they often thrive in high-level management, political, or highly competitive sales roles, where strategic maneuvering and emotional detachment are often rewarded. They seek control and stability, not chaos, because stable systems are easier to manipulate over the long term. This is a subtle yet powerful insight. Before we dive into the specific protocols needed to defend against calculated exploitation, we must contrast this strategic profile with the high-risk, high-impulse individual who shares a similar manipulative capacity, the psychopath. If you've enjoyed this clinical breakdown so far, take a moment to subscribe. Knowing the difference between these two paths, Machiavellianism and psychopathy, is the first step toward building a truly resilient recovery protocol. We briefly revisit psychopathy as context. The clinical profile, defined by deficits in core emotional processes, includes a lack of remorse, profound empathy deficit, and pathological lying. Crucially, psychopaths often display high impulsivity and a need for immediate stimulation. While they possess superficial charm, their emotional depth is severely shallow, and they are less concerned with long-term strategic success than with immediate gratification, dominance, or simply avoiding boredom. A psychopath can certainly exist in the workplace, and they can be terrifying. But their impulsivity and need for stimulation frequently lead to high-risk behaviors, unnecessary conflicts, theft, or outright disregard for rules that eventually lead to self-sabotaging their own careers. While the Machiavellian is often driven by the prestige of a corner office, the psychopath may risk it all for the thrill of deceiving the security guard or causing a subordinate emotional distress. This key difference, impulsivity, is why the high Mach is often seen in sustained leadership roles, while the psychopath frequently burns out or changes jobs rapidly. This is the core differentiating factor, motive. The Machiavellian aims for purely instrumental gain. They want the outcome. The promotion, the client, the bonus. If they hurt you, it's only a means to that end. If you are no longer useful, they simply discard you, generally without further malice. The psychopath, however, often seeks dominance, status, or derives intrinsic pleasure from the act of cruelty, manipulation, or deception itself. For the psychopath, the manipulation is the reward. This distinction fundamentally changes how you process and recover from the toxic interaction. Consider their relationship with risk. The Machiavellian avoids unnecessary conflict that might threaten their long-term position. They conduct their manipulation in the shadows, adhering to the letter of company policy while violating the spirit. They want plausible deniability. The psychopath, due to their impulsivity and lack of emotional foresight, is often prone to taking immediate risks, sometimes simply because they are bored, regardless of the consequences to their career. In a professional setting, the Machiavellian is a surgeon of strategy. The psychopath is a bomb waiting to go off. Finally, we look at effect. The Machiavellian is emotionally detached, often functioning quite normally while maintaining a clinical distance from others. They can mimic appropriate emotions when strategically useful. The psychopath is often emotionally shallow. Their charm is superficial and their emotional regulation is poor. This volatile effect is often the psychopath's operational weakness, a mistake the highly strategic Machiavellian almost never makes in a professional capacity. Since Machiavellians are rational actors, our counter-strategies must also be purely rational and instrumental. Protocol 1. Radical documentation. Since their goal is instrumental gain through cunning, the goal is to make their manipulation inefficient and risky. Ensure every promise, every agreement, and every shift in strategy is documented in writing and traceable. A Machiavellian operates in ambiguity. Your job is to enforce crystal clear professional limits. They thrive on verbal manipulation. You rely on paper trails and digital evidence. Protocol 2. Become an inefficient target. The Machiavellian is not interested in wasted effort. Avoid emotional investment and never, under any circumstances, share personal vulnerabilities or weaknesses they could leverage. Establish non-negotiable professional boundaries regarding your time, resources, and workload. If manipulating you requires too much risk or effort, if the cost outweighs the benefit, the Machiavellian strategist will rationally disengage and seek an easier target. Your resilience is built on presenting a consistently high transactional cost. Dealing with a psychopath requires different protocols because their lack of emotional restraint introduces significant volatility and safety concerns. Protocol for the psychopath: safety and containment. Minimize all unnecessary contact and emotional interaction. Do not engage in unnecessary small talk, do not share details about your life, and use the gray rock method to make yourself utterly uninteresting. Crucially, never compete or directly challenge their perceived authority or dominance, as this can trigger an impulsive, vengeful reaction that has no rational connection to their career goals, only their need to dominate. Protocol 2 for the psychopath: rely on institutional structures. If boundaries are breached violently or inappropriately, verbally or physically, logic will not prevail. You must utilize formalized organizational structures, HR, management, or legal channels. Document everything but rely on the organization to enforce the rules, not on the psychopath's capacity for reason. The goal is professional withdrawal, ensuring your safety and minimizing the window of opportunity for their high-risk behavior to impact you directly. Let's summarize the critical warning signs specific to the calculating Machiavellian. First, their time investment is conditional. They only engage with you, flatter you, or mentor you when they need something immediately. Second, their loyalty is instantaneous and perfectly aligned with power dynamics, shifting without explanation the moment someone loses influence. Third, their charm is purely utilitarian. It feels cold, and it only comes out when it serves an immediate goal. These interactions are fundamentally transactional, never emotional. Recognizing this purely calculated exploitation is critical for accelerating emotional recovery. When you realize the exploitation was purely instrumental and non-emotional, You are a tool, not a personalized enemy. It allows you to depersonalize the abuse. This insight helps survivors avoid internalizing the pain, recognizing that the interaction was a strategic failure on their part to establish sufficient boundaries, not a failure of their intrinsic worth. The clinical justification for this differentiation is found in the recovery process itself. Healing from instrumental manipulation, the Machiavellian path involves rebuilding strong professional boundaries, reestablishing strategic thinking, and optimizing one's own professional efficacy. It is a process of learning to thrive in strategic environments. Healing from malicious cruelty, the psychopathic path involves deeper trauma recovery related to betrayal, fear, and emotional invalidation. Accurate identification allows us to tailor the recovery plan. Stop internalizing abuse incorrectly. Understand the pathology, implement the correct protocol, and transition from survival to true resilience. We have covered how the Machiavellian is defined by calculating cunning and instrumental gain, making them formidable but predictable adversaries in the workplace. Contrast this with the psychopath, whose impulsivity and need for intrinsic domination introduce high volatility and severe risk. Remember, counter strategies must match the pathology. Be calculated against the strategist. Be safe against the impulsive. Apply the professional protocols we discussed today to safeguard your career and your mental well-being. If this clinical insight into dark psychology was valuable, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to safeguard their professional path. Subscribe to the Resilience Protocol for weekly insights grounded in professional knowledge that help you decode manipulation and accelerate your trauma recovery. Our mission is empowerment, moving you from survival to thriving. Thank you for joining us. We will continue building your resilience next time.